Welcome back, kiddos. Now we are talking about, especially with functions. So, is it a function or not? Okay, it is a function whenever the x values do not repeat. Okay, so if it is, x's can't repeat. Okay, so that's what we want to remember. X's cannot repeat. Okay, so let's take a look at this. It says which one of these does not show y as a function. So we're looking for false on this one. So take a quick look at these, see which ones you think. Okay, so we said x's can't repeat. So none of these are good. So that one's a true, but we're looking for false. Okay, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. None of those are the same, but so those are true. This one, negative 2, 1.6, 1.3, 1.2, negative zero point 0.2. So we have negative zero point 0.2 here. And we have negative zero point 0.2 here, so that one is false. So that was why this one is the correct answer. All right, so that's it. X's can't repeat. All right, next. Next, we're going to talk about the y-intercept. The y-intercept is our initial value, okay, also known as starting amount. Okay, and then we know it's when so the y-intercept is when x is 0. Okay, so that's how we know the y-intercept. Okay, so it's where the graph crosses the y-axis. Okay, so that's another way of thinking of it. So three different ways we can think of it. Okay, so one of it's where it crosses the y-axis. Second is a starting amount. Third is when x is 0. Okay, so let's take a look over here. It says, what is the value of the y-intercept in this graph? Okay, so we could type that in. Remember, this is the same thing as y equals. Okay, so we could just type that in and we would come up with this. It says this is on here. What is the y-intercept? Since we said it's where it crosses the y-axis, it's right there. It's our y value of 4. Okay. Next, similarly, okay, we talked about the y-intercept. Now we're going to talk about the x-intercept. Okay, so the y-intercept is where it crosses the y-axis. X-intercept is where it crosses the x-axis. Okay, so these are also called roots, zeros, or solutions. Solutions, that's why we call it rocks. Okay, so those are those four terms: roots, zeros, x-intercepts, and solutions. That's how we remember that. So it's where it crosses the x-axis. Okay, so it says find the zeros. We know those are x-intercepts, right? That's what we talked about. Anytime we see 0, we know it's the same thing as an x-intercept. Okay, so we know it's where it crosses the x-axis, right? So right there is where it crosses the x-axis. Okay, and right there is where it crosses the x-axis. So let's look at those numbers. All right, so the first one would be when x is equal to negative 4. Okay, and the second one is when x is equal to 8. So those are our answers. Okay, so that's the first thing we want to talk about. If it is a function, that means the x's can't repeat. Y-intercept is where it crosses the y-axis. We know this is the y-axis, so where it crosses is right there. So y equals 4. X-intercept crosses the x-axis. So this one crosses the x-axis right there and right there. All right, next. Linear functions have a slope and a y-intercept. So it can be written in this form, okay? And this form is called slope-intercept form. Okay, now think about that. It's called slope-intercept because it gives us the slope and the y-intercept. Okay, so if we look in front of the x, we find this value right here. The number in front of the x is called the slope. Okay, so it's always in front of the x. Okay, and then the number that's at the back is called the y-intercept. Okay, so if it's solved for y, that's all we do is look at those locations. All right, so on this question, it says, what is the slope of this graph? Okay, so take a quick look at that and see if you got the right answer. Okay, well, we said the slope is the number in front of the x. So if we see the x here, the number in front of the x is 12. So that's why that one is our correct answer. Okay, simple as that. All right, next says which ones of these can be represented by this? Okay, so what will we do on this? We would type those in, right? But actually, let's go ahead and we're going to come back to that one in just a moment. All right, next. So another thing, slope is also known as rate of change. So both of these are the same thing. Okay, it's just a fancy way of saying it. So if we see rate of change, we have to know they're asking for the slope. So if we are given 2 points, so this one is given 2 points. Okay. So if we're just given 2 points, we can use this to find our slope. Okay, so let's take a look at this problem over here and we'll do this. This is called the tilde button right here. Okay, so it's the crucial thing is that we type it in. First line we're going to type this in. Second line we're going to put our points in. I'm sorry. This first thing we're going to do is first put the points. Okay. Second we're going to type this in. Okay, and then third thing we're going to do is just look for that M. All right, so let's take a look over here. It says, which one is represented by this? Okay, so we want to make sure that we have our desmos. So let's go ahead and pull this up. Okay, and the first thing we said we're going to do is, first thing I said is add our points. All right, so they want us to find the rate of change on this, right? So we know that rate of change, right, means the same thing as slope. Okay, so on this one, all they give us are these points right here, and they want us to find the slope. So we're just going to use our that procedure. So the first thing we're going to do is add our table. Okay, so I just need 2 points. So I'm just going to choose these 2 points right here. Okay, so the first one is x and y, right? So negative 8.5 and negative 92. So I'm going to go over here. I'm going to put negative 8.5. Okay, then I'm going to go over here. I'm going to type in negative 92. Okay, now I'm going to go over here. For my next line, I'm going to put negative 6.5 and negative 72. So negative 6.5. Okay, going to go to the next one and negative 72. Okay, so that's the first thing. I just type it in. All right, next. So if I do this, I could zoom and I would see those points on there. Okay, but that's not critical. All right, so the second line, I'm going to type in that y1 tilde mx1 plus b. So let's type that in. So I'm going to type y. Now, if I just type 1, it's automatically going to put it at the bottom. Okay, then the critical thing is this tilde. So tilde, we have to push our keyboard button, and it's right there. Okay, then we just type mx. Push this again to go to 1. Once you push that 1, it's going to put it below there automatically. All right, and then you see this other stuff's coming. We have to keep going. Plus B. Go to this ABC and push B. Okay. Now, as soon as I type that in, it pulls up this information right over here. We said M is our slope, right? B is our y-intercept. So the question was, what is the rate of change, which we said is slope. So our answer is 10. Okay, so that's all we have to do is just type that in, and then we'll find that that answer is right there. Okay, next, horizontal and vertical lines. This comes into slope as well. Okay, so with the horizontal and vertical, we remember Hoy and Vux. Hoy stands for horizontal lines have zero slope and always start with y equals. Okay, so horizontal lines go side to side. They go left to right. So they have zero slope. So let's talk about the slopes. First off, this is, if I go up like that, that's called positive slope, right? If I'm going down, that's called negative slope. Okay, if I don't do anything at all, that's called zero slope, right? And if I go up and down, that's called undefined. Okay, so if it's a 0, if it goes like this, we know it's horizontal. Hoy, it has horizontal slope, horizontal line. It's 0 slope, and the equation for this is always going to be y equals some number. Okay, so for a vertical line that goes up and down, we're going to think VUX though on that. Vertical lines have undefined slope and start with x equals. So a vertical line, if we know it like that, we're going to remember VUX. Okay, so it's undefined slope, and then that's a u, and then the equation is always going to start with x equals some number. Okay, so let's try to remember that Hoy and Vux. Okay, so let's take a look at this one right over here. It says which equation represents this? Well, one thing is we notice it goes down, right? So we could type all these in and see which one's the right answer. I'm going to show you something though. If it goes down, I know the slope is negative, right? The slope is the number in front of the x. So it has to be one of these with a negative number, right? That's a positive 6. So that can't be good. That's a positive 4. That can't be good. So it's either this one or this one, right? Then we said the other number is our y-intercept, right? Y-intercept is where it crosses the y-axis, right? So on this one, it crosses the y-axis right there at 4. So we know that that one has to be the correct answer. Okay? So if we type that in, it would come up just like that. All right, next, what about this equation? It says, what's the equation and the slope? Well, what do we notice about that? This one goes straight up and down, right? So is that vertical or horizontal? Well, we know it is vertical, all right? So the slope is u for undefined. Okay, and then what's the equation? The equation we know starts with x equals because it's vertical, and the x value is right over there. So x equals 4. Okay, so that's our answer. All right, so let's keep it moving. All right, so here's what we want to remember on these two. Okay, so parallel lines have the same slope. Okay, so go ahead and draw these two lines. So if we have two lines like that, we know that they never cross, they never meet. Okay, so that's called parallel lines. So it says over here, which equation in slope-intercept form passes through this point 5, 0 and is parallel? Okay, so parallel means the same slope, right? So if it's 1.2, we know it has to have the answer that has positive 1.2 in the front. So we know that one can't be correct, right? And we know that one can't be correct. So now let's use our Desmos. Okay, so say we erased both of those. I can go over here and I can actually type in parentheses 5, 0. So let's type that in, 5, 0. Okay, and then I can type in one of these and see which one works, right? So let's type in that first one. So I can type in y equals 1.2x minus 6. 1.2x minus 6. Okay, and we see that it goes right through that point that we just talked about. So that's why that one is the correct answer. All right, let's keep it moving. Perpendicular lines, though, are not the same. Parallel lines never meet, but perpendicular lines are like this. They cross at a right angle. Okay, so if the slope of one is, say, 1 over 4, the perpendicular slope would be negative 4 over 1. So we call that the opposite reciprocal. Opposite reciprocal. Opposite means use the opposite sign. Okay, reciprocal means we flip the fraction. Okay, so instead of positive 1 over 4, we're going to use the opposite, negative 4 over 1. Okay, so let's look at this problem. It says, what is the equation in slope-intercept form of a line that crosses the x-axis at 36 and is perpendicular to this line? Okay, so perpendicular means not the same slope, but opposite reciprocal. So negative 4 over 9 is not the correct answer, right? It needs to be something with opposite, so it needs to be positive, but it needs to be flipped, right? So it's a negative 4 over 9, right? It needs to be positive 9 over 4. So that has to be one of our right answers. So that's not right, and then that's not right. Okay, so what we need to do then is just type those in and see which one crosses at that 90-degree angle. So let's go ahead and type that in. Let's type in our original problem. So we're going to say y equals. Okay, then we're going to say negative 4 over 9x. So negative 4 divided by 9. I'm going to go to the right and push x. Okay, then I'm going to put plus 5. Okay, now my next line, I'm going to see if this is correct. So I'm going to type C in. So I'm going to just type in y equals. Right, and then I'll type in 9 divided by 4. Okay, I'm going to go to the right. I'm going to push X and then plus 81. Okay, so if we notice, that one does cross at a 90-degree angle. I can check this other one, right? This other one's the same thing except for minus. So let's just check that real quick. I can push minus there. And then that's also uh, um, 9 fourths. Oh, but this one says crosses the x-axis at 36, right? So let's check over here. This one crosses right at 36, right? So that one is correct. So the correct answer is right over here. So both of them look good, but this is the main thing. We have to say that it crosses that x-axis at 36. That's when the y value is 0 is when it crosses. All right. So make sure that we get all those notes down. Make sure you copy it down just like that so you have it for your records. And then just go ahead and start those practices.